Hey guys, so this is one of the most difficult videos out of the series, and it's, I guess, the most recent one so far. I really hope there'll be one more video in this series, and that is when I tell you that everything's been finalized. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's probably, I don't even know. I don't know what stage it's at, but it is absolutely not resolved, and we're in the middle of everything. And what everything is, I'll tell you in just a moment. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, make sure you watch my salon fail series. There's 3 videos before this. In the first part, I explain what it's all actually about, where I explain to you what the idea behind this whole salon opening concept was, how I found a business partner, and basically where we are now with the big financial losses, court cases, and a lot of uncertainty. Part 2 is a very, very interesting part. I really highly recommend watching because it's very useful for you in terms of how to set up, how to do financials, how to run a business, how to start a business, how to run a business. It's useful for anyone who's wanting to open a salon, or even if you're just working at home by yourself, this will really be useful for you. And in that part, I also share how we found the salon space, how we started renovating everything, preparing, doing all the orders, everything. It's a very interesting part. Part 3 was another difficult video to share with you. This was where I introduced you to my landlord from hell and all the things that started going wrong. That point where everything just crumbled down and just snowballed and got worse and worse and worse. And now we're at the peak where that snowball. So let me tell you what happened next. What happened next? So the last thing that we finished up on was when I was in hospital after the accusation of my ex-business partner's boyfriend, which was very strange. But anyway, while I was in hospital, I do a lot of like meditations and things like that. So I'm very into personal development and just like spirituality and practices like that. And a few weeks before I actually got to hospital, I had a very interesting experience. I was at a piano concert that was done in a super interesting format where they had the whole concert hall with no lights, no sounds. It had just this big piano with like candles all around it. And the guy was playing very, very difficult compositions. And they made it in like a meditation format where you weren't allowed to clap, you weren't allowed to like make any sound for the entire concert. So like an hour and a half or 2 hours, he was just non-stop playing these like very, very difficult compositions. And you're just sitting there in the dark and your mind's not getting distracted by other things. So you're just in this like really deep meditative state. And while I was in this deep meditation, I had this vision that I need to go to China and then I need to go to the Maldives. And for me, this is really, really strange because Maldives is like a place for me that it's in a faraway box, in the sense that I used to travel a lot. Well, I still travel a lot. Like there's around probably close to 60 countries that I've been to now. And Maldives have always been like, I never even think about it because for me it's the place I'll go to for my honeymoon. So there was definitely not from like my conscious mind that I need to go there. So this is completely like vision like. So I was like, okay, that's strange. But anyway, that's like a little pre-story. And I kept getting these kind of like visions, like I could literally see myself. And while I was in hospital, I made this agreement with, it sounds really ridiculous, but I made this agreement with, the universe, that if I was really, really sick. I just had no energy when I was in hospital. I was sleeping for about 18-20 hours per day, every day. Like I couldn't move, I couldn't eat. I was so tired. Like I had no nutrients at all, no energy at all. And I made an agreement the night before, and I said to the universe, if I get better tomorrow, if I get better tomorrow, like everything is good and I get released out of the hospital tomorrow morning, that day I'll pack my stuff and I'll go and do what this vision showed me. I'll go to China and I'll go to the Maldives. However, at the time, so I haven't really been working for the last year or so. I had a really, really bad burnout. And just my salon has been working, and I reinvest everything in terms of financials back into the salon. So I didn't have a lot of money to just sort of like, off you go. So, and Maldives aren't the most cheap place to go to. Anyway, and just I don't even know how, but somehow things just aligned, and I had perfect amount of money to be able to go. I got super cheap tickets, like $150 or something like that. Like it's just really like magical kind of coincidences. And anyway, so as you figured, the next morning I wake up and I'm completely fine, and the doctor says, that's it, we're releasing you from hospital. And I was like, okay. So, of course, well, at first I was like, this doesn't really make sense. But then I was like, okay, no, I made a promise. The universe delivered on their end. So I need to deliver on my end. Anyway, so that's a little pre-story, and I'll explain to you why I told you about this. So it's kind of like getting back to a good state where I could sort of function. And I get out of hospital and I buy my tickets. That day I flew. I was still allowed to fly back then with the pregnancy. And I get a message from my accountant saying that she's received a resignation letter from my business partner. And by this point, absolutely all communication stopped with the business partner. So she just finished her last shift while I was still in hospital. I'm pretty sure it was just before I got into hospital. So she finished her last shift and just completely started ignoring me. So obviously before she was saying talk to my lawyer, but there was no details of a lawyer. I asked her 4 or 5 times. I asked her for contact details of a lawyer. Nothing. So I've had absolutely no communication. I've not been able to reach her in any way. I've sent her some emails, and anyway, so no response to any online communication directly with me at all. So when we had this resignation letter come, I was like, what? That was very unexpected, because before that she was like, yeah, let's get this all done. We'll figure out how to get out of this lease together. So she was, I thought we were on the same page until I realized we weren't. And I looked at the dates and it all started making sense as to why she was getting, strange with the whole talk to my lawyer thing, because obviously she had, I guess not obviously, but I assume that she had planned to resign. And I knew that at that time, after her last shift as admin at my other salon, she went overseas because she's from overseas. Anyway, once I understood what actually happened with that, remember that her and her boyfriend took all the furniture without consulting or checking with me. Just a few days, technically speaking, before this resignation. So I sent her a message asking her to return the company assets to the registered company address, because we're in the middle of this issue with the landlord. So we, first of all, needed to sort things out with the landlord, and second of all, we needed to pay back investors. So this wasn't obviously for me to just like enjoy this furniture and make money off it. This was because we have legal business obligations. And I didn't get any response. I sent her an official letter of demand, a legal letter of demand for her to return all the property, to which again she didn't respond. And about a month later, I received a letter with an invoice. It was clearly backdated, email, a letter, I should say. It wasn't an email, it's a physical letter. It was a clearly backdated letter with an invoice. It was unsigned, and I knew that she was overseas at this point, so it couldn't have come from her. So I'm assuming, of course, it was her boyfriend, but again, this is my assumption and I have no idea. But she dated the letter 2 days before her resignation, and in the letter there were more accusations that apparently I made unnecessary financial purchases, which led to problems with finances. However, we didn't have problems with finances had there not been issues with the landlord. And in terms of any financial decisions that we made, as I mentioned in the previous video, for me it's very, very important that all decisions in a partnership are made together. So absolutely every single decision that I made, every single purchase that was made, was all confirmed by her. So anyway, but the most interesting thing was that in the letter it said that she had made, because in the letter of demand, let me go back. So in the letter of demand, I mentioned to her that she's legally responsible as a guarantor for the lease and things like that. And I also mentioned that as she's no longer a director, she has no right to keep this furniture or make any further decisions based in this business. So hence why they backdated, of course, the letter a whole month ago, as if it was a real letter that happened at the time. And the funniest thing was that I find this very amusing is that they mentioned in the letter that she made the decision to sell all assets, all furniture, to pay for further storage costs. So I'm not really sure what she's planning on storing because she sold everything, but clearly it made sense to them. So I found that very ridiculous. And the most upsetting thing was that she sold everything for $3,400. And the market value of this furniture is around $36,000. So so obviously this is significantly under market value. And guess who she sold the furniture to? Her boyfriend, her boyfriend's company. So very, very, very disappointed when I saw this letter and this invoice. And for a really long time, I didn't really want to take any legal matters, any legal action, but because she doesn't have a visa, she doesn't have a permanent visa in Australia, and this could have some significant repercussions for her, and I really didn't want that potentially to even happen. But as the only sole director, I have no other choice but to act in the best interest of the business, first of all, and second of all, I'm a personal guarantor for this as well, and we need to sort things out with this landlord and just with everything in general. So I've ended up applying for a police applied for a police claim. They've sent me through to the civil court, so now we're going to be applying for a civil court application, and we'll be going to court with her, because unfortunately she's not responding to anything at all. She's not communicating, she's not trying to mitigate, and I've done everything I could to try and get in contact with her. But unfortunately she has completely decided to do this. So that's very, very sad. In terms of, and the other thing is that makes things even more difficult is, like I said, there's no assets in the company. All the money has run out for renovations and all the things that we were doing. So how do we actually open on time? Everything would have been fine. We planned everything out financially, but because we had all of these delays and we couldn't open, well, basically the number one reason, because we couldn't open, we ended up running out of money. So even at the time that we were dealing with the landlord, when the first situation came up, we couldn't get a good lawyer because we just couldn't afford one. So this makes things a lot more difficult, especially now where I'm overseas and I'm pregnant, so I can't travel, and a lot of things you have to physically apply for yourself. And I obviously can't do that because I'm not in Australia, so that makes things even more fun. But anyway, so meanwhile, I went to the Maldives. I don't know how it happened. It was just literally magic. Just all aligned. And I had this very, like a few days before I left, I had this very strange, again, like kind of like a vision, to invite my ex-fiance to the Maldives. And he was like, you know, like, Lisa, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever, like, you know, financially. He had a whole bunch of meetings, like, just it didn't work out for him time-wise, money-wise, like no logical reason for him to come. And plus we had we're pretty much not even speaking, like we were maintaining communication just for the sake of, you know, because we're parents and we need to raise a child together, but there was no like relationship at this point. Anyway, and the day before I flew to the Maldives, after I went to China, I remember this moment where I was walking to my bed just before I went to bed. I had a shower and I walked over to my bed and I said out loud that, you know, because I just felt like my energy was still kind of going there and, you know, wasn't going somewhere new. And I said out loud that, you know, if he can't come in the dates that I'll be there, like I'm closing that door forever, sort of a thing. So like he'll just be, you know, baby's dad, and that's it. And I wake up in the morning just before I go to the airport and I get a message from him, and for him it's like 4 a.m. and I got a message and I'm like, oh, why aren't you sleeping? He's like, oh, I went to the toilet and I bought a ticket to the Maldives. I was like, what? This is so strange. Anyway, so he ended up coming to the Maldives, and the next day, yeah, so we met the next day, and our relationship just like just totally transformed. And like this is a whole separate story, and I'll share this on my Instagram sometime soon, because there's a lot of interest in this story. But yeah, the next day he invited me. He proposed to get married again, and I said okay. And then a few weeks later we ended up getting married. But anyway, that's another story. So that's a little bit of happy news that was happening in that time. And honestly, that really probably needed to happen because there was a lot of not so happy news happening at the time. So that was really nice. That was really nice. And I went to Russia, saw my family, and then we came back to Bali, and now we've settled, and now we're married, and now we're having a little baby. And still obviously dealing with the rest of the things, but at least this side of life is a little bit more simple, a little bit better, and I have an amazing support network now. So that's really, really nice. But anyway, let's get back to the salon fail story. So while I was in Russia, we were trying to mitigate through small business commissioner with a landlord, and they refused. So basically he refused any offer other than what he offered, and basically they did everything to try and get the absolute most money out of us, or out of me, because the business partner was gone by now. But had they actually accepted the offer of the bank guarantee and the deposit, they would have covered absolutely all costs. But anyway, so they ended up officially declining to mitigate. They didn't even come to the meeting because they wanted the other business partner there, but she's not answering anyone. She's not answering me. She's not answering the small business commissioner. She wasn't answering the landlord. So they didn't want to talk to just me because she's still a personal guarantor, and she's still, well, first of all, she's still personally liable for this rental agreement, same as I am. Plus legally she's still liable for all business decisions made prior to her resignation, and obviously all of this happened prior to her resignation, so I'm not sure who she was consulting with legally, but clearly she's not aware, or if she's aware, she doesn't seem to care. Anyway, so now we're applying for court with obviously her, the business partner, applying to go to court with the landlord to try and help us sort everything out, because remember, there's still a lot of other issues that we had with the landlord, and I'm really hoping that the court system can kind of help us out, because we really did do everything we could. Like, you know, we didn't have any intention not to open the business. We had every intention to open the business, to run it successfully, to pay everyone, to stay at this location for a long time because it's a good location. But unfortunately, yeah, there was a lot of breaches on behalf of the landlord, or on the landlord's side from him personally. And of course, like, had we known that this was not a suitable property, that we just legally, like, pretty much no business can legally operate there, obviously we wouldn't have signed this lease in the first place. So I'm not really sure what will happen with with either of the cases, with the landlord or with the business partner, but you can pray for me. You can pray for me, and if you have any maybe advice, or maybe you know someone who can help, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear from you. You can message me on my Instagram, or that's probably the best place to message me on my Instagram. And I really hope that none of you ever have to go through something like this. So yeah, I guess stay tuned for the next episode of this story. But I also really recommend signing up and subscribing, I should say, and turning on your notifications, because I've got lots and lots of very useful, very interesting content planned for you. Lots of nail stuff, lots of tutorials, lots of masterclasses, lots of financial help and things like that. So I've had this like inspiration to run my YouTube now, so I'm really, really excited for that. So please support me in that and enjoy the rest of the videos. See you next time.